Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the award-winning podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Please sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com for weekly updates about my podcasts, events, and more. Also, follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and also at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. And finally, join my virtual book club called Zibby's Virtual Book Club, which meets every other Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time until 3 p.m. and features half an hour of book club discussion followed by 30 minutes of Q&A with the author whose book we've just discussed. You can sign up on my website, zibbyowens.com, under the Virtual Book Club section, or even on Instagram under the link in my bio. I hope you'll find me in all these different channels and enjoy this podcast. Hi, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but I have an anthology coming out called Moms Don't Have Time To, a quarantine anthology. And it comes out on February 16th and has essays by 60 plus of the authors who have been on this podcast. So first of all, please pre-order this book. I think you will love it. I'm so excited about all the authors who are represented. Just to give you a few, Chris Bajalian, Jewel Parker Rhodes, Ashley Prentice Norton, Gretchen Rubin, Rima Zaman, Eileen Zimmerman, and that is just from the first page of the multi-page table of contents. So please pick up this book, Moms Don't Have Time To, a quarantine anthology. It's available anywhere you buy books, Amazon, bookshop.org, and your local independent bookstore. So please pick up a copy. And also, I want to invite you listeners to my fundraiser / launch party the night it comes out on February 16th, a Tuesday at 7 p.m. Bookhampton and the Children's Museum of the East End are co-hosting it for me, and 50 of the authors who wrote essays in this book, as well as many of the amazing authors who blurbed this book, who wrote little praiseworthy quotes at the front, will be there, and you can be there too. So if you go to my website, zibbyowens.com, and just click on Anthology and go to Book Tour, you will see a whole fundraiser section. And for $50, you can attend. You'll get a copy of the book, and you'll get to schmooze on Zoom with all of these amazing authors. This is like going to be the literary happening of February. So please come. I would love to see you all in person on Zoom, I guess, but even see some of your faces. I know so many of you are really loyal listeners, and that makes me really happy. All proceeds of the book and the fundraiser are going to the Susan Felice Owens Program for COVID-19 Vaccine Research at Mount Sinai Health System, and it is named after my husband's mother, who passed away from COVID over the summer, which many of you followed along on Instagram as I recounted that horrific experience. So all the proceeds are going there. The cost includes the price of a book. So thank you for supporting this effort and for supporting my book. I can't wait to see you there. Today's episode has been sponsored by Chicken Soup for the Soul, Making Me Time, 101 Stories About Self-Care and Balance, edited by Amy Newmark. This is a fantastic collection of essays, and everyone will find something relatable and that they can use to make their lives better within these essays. Abigail Dean is the debut author of Girl A, her first novel, which is publishing in spring 2021. She's a lawyer, and before that, she was a bookseller. She currently lives in London and is working on her second novel. Welcome, Abigail. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss Girl A.
Thank you so much for having me, Zibby. It's really awesome to be here.
Oh, well, this book, oh my gosh, intense. Can you tell listeners what it's about and how did you come up with the idea for this book?
Sure, I can. So Girl A is Lex Gracie. And as a child, Lex manages to escape from her family home, which becomes known as the House of Horrors in the press. And when she does, she frees her 6 brothers and sisters and exposes her parents' crimes. And Girl A opens 15 years after that escape. And Lex, by then, is a successful attorney. She's living in New York. She just does not want to think about her childhood in any way. That is until her mother dies in prison. And when she does, she leaves Lex and her siblings, the family home, and the House of Horrors, where they grew up. So Lex has to return to the UK, reconnect with her brothers and sisters, and kind of, revisit those old battles and the old alliances of their childhood to decide the fate of the house. So it was.
Your imagination, by the way, I mean, you were not in a house like this, correct? I'm assuming, or were you?
No, I was not.
Okay.
Yeah, the Gracie family and Lex. I am a lawyer, but I'm nowhere near as good a lawyer as Lex is. And this was very much not my childhood. Yes.
Good. I didn't think so. Okay. So first of all, how did you come up with this whole idea for this book? And I know it's your first foray into this whole thing. Why this topic, and how did you make it so real? I mean, it literally feels like you were in that room with the window and the shackles and the piles of garbage, and the way you had it with, it's just so real. So tell me, just how did you do that?
It's a weird thing where, you kind of look back at the writing and you're like, I don't know, but thinking about it, I think there are things that sort of I did do and that I can think back to. So I think one of the things that I'd often, been really interested in and being kind of conflicted about in another way was, I'm a big kind of consumer of true crime. I've watched the documentaries on Netflix, I've listened to the podcasts, and I always wondered, often that those materials focus on the particular action or the event, but there's so much time after that. You have the people who were affected by those crimes. There are so many months and years and decades that follow them, and I think that was one of the ideas that I was really thinking about with Girl A. In these cases that often do affect children, how do they live the rest of their lives, and what kind of resilience and strength those human beings have. And that was something I wanted to be a real focus of the novel, just looking at these characters in turn who've all reacted really differently to what happened to them in the House of Horrors. How do they live now? That was a sort of real kind of question that I wanted to look at. And I think in creating the house, I actually really often think about houses in literature, the House of Usher in Poe, or in a way like Hogwarts in the Harry Potter books. They are almost a character in their own right, I think. I mean, they shape the book as much as any of the sort of actual other characters do. And I think that's how I wanted the house on Morwoods Road to be in Girl A, where the children grow up. I had sort of small sketches of where the different rooms were and where the different children are at different times. And I think it was just a case of sort of almost thinking about the house as with the same importance as the people who occupy it, if that makes sense.
I feel like if I were writing this, I would have to just take my own house or something and make it, to recreate a total, I don't think visually like that, in terms of being able to just manufacture another completely new house that then devolves into this crazy, stuff that happens. I don't know. I'm very impressed. In other words, it's impressive.
I think that the landscape definitely is because the house is also set on this moorland. It's quite isolated. It's sort of out of town up this, road where the houses get further and further apart. I think that road is definitely based on a road that is very near to my parents' house and where I grew up. Okay. It's a road that always kind of made me a bit on edge. It kind of goes up into the moorland just outside of Manchester. And it's one of those roads as well where the street lamps just kind of stop halfway up. So I think that was a real influence. It was just one of those roads that, you kind of take a different route to avoid it. One of those. So it's not all entirely fictional, I think, in terms of the setting. The house maybe, but not the road.
Okay. So you could actually imagine when Lexi escapes and is standing in the road half naked and, has to stop a car and go to the hospital, and that look of horror on the driver's face. Like, oh my gosh. So you have like the actual backdrop for the whole thing, which is very cool.
Yeah, exactly. I think the roads just got more scary for me. I don't think I'm going to be able to go like along it ever again. No.
Yeah, you're going to have to be continually taking alternate routes here. Or you have to get some sort of a new lamp or something and say, like, this is where this book was based, you can put like a post, change the whole look.
I'll give that a go, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so when you set out to write this book, how did you integrate it with your career as an attorney and everything? When did you write it? How did you decide, like, okay, I'm also going to write this book and I'm going to take the time for it? And how did that all happen? Or was it just more organic?
It was, in a way, it wasn't very organic, I guess. I'd been working as an attorney in law firms for 6 years or so. And I had just come to the end of like a really tough time at work, just with really grueling hours. I remember very vividly missing my husband's birthday on a Saturday night that I had like planned. And just kind of, I think it was one of those moments where you sort of step back a bit and you look at your life and you're like, oh, was this actually what I wanted? Like, was this the plan? And if this was the plan, like, should it still be the plan? Because you're obviously not particularly happy right now. And one of the kind of elements, of that was the fact that I hadn't written in that 6-year period. It was something that as a kid I was always doing. As a teenager, I was writing fan fiction and I was like filling notebooks, and it had completely slipped away from me. So I think in terms of trying to address the sort of work issues, I was like, I'm going to leave my job, but as part of that, I want to take some time to give writing a go, and to just see if I can get something down, and if it's something that my family and friends might want to read, and we can go from there. So I took 3 months off between jobs. I had another legal job lined up that I knew would have better hours and a kind of more realistic, balanced approach to things. So yeah, in that 3-month period, so to be honest, Sibby, I thought, I'm going to finish my novel. I'm going to finish it. I mean, how ridiculous. I got about halfway, maybe about a third of the way through. And then it was another 9 months of working away, in the evenings and at weekends. But, that was also while working in a job that was much more manageable and gave me the sort of energy to be able to write Girl A and to finish it.
So you might not have finished it in the 3 months, but I bet you did enough in the 3 months that it got propelled. And I mean, sometimes you need that headspace just to like completely delve in. So I would not beat yourself up about it. I think 3 months is definitely aggressive, but I love that you tried it, because like, look what happened.
It's true. And I think that you're exactly right in terms of you almost make such an investment in that 3-month period. It's like I could have gone traveling, and instead I was sitting in a library, like, working on Girl A. And I think that you put in so much that in a way that in itself is a big driver to just kind of keep going. And in the more tiring evenings, and when you're like, I'd really rather be watching like Selling Sunset right now, okay, like, actually no, I'm gonna write Girl A, and I'm going to try to see it through.
And so what happened then when you finished it?
I finished it around sort of springtime of 2019, I think. And I actually had shown it by then to my family. I'd shown it to my husband, and I'd shown it to my parents, who are retired English teachers as well. And they were all like, my husband said very memorably, and I kind of laugh at him for this, but it was actually one of the nicest things that anybody has said to me. He said, it's like a book that you would buy in a shop. And, I thought, okay, well, in that case, I'll try to send it to agents and I will just see if they're interested. So I kind of put together the sort of pack that, as a writer, you put together the covering letter and the summary and your first 3 chapters, and sent it out to some agents who I knew had represented or loved books that were similar to Girl A. That's what I looked for. I think often agents list their favorite books on their websites, or you can read about recent deals in the press. And that's kind of how I targeted the submissions. And quite a few agents were interested. I think 3 of the 5 that I sent it to. And I think that was the first moment when you think like, oh, like this could actually happen, maybe. Obviously there's still a lot of stages to go, but it felt really hopeful that for the first time.
That's amazing. And then your agent took it out and sold it right away? Is that what happened? I don't know the publication story.
No, not at all. So we actually, one of the reasons that I ended up going with my agent was that she felt that it needed quite a lot of work before we sent it to publishers. So she wanted to spend a bit of time editing it with me. And I really liked that idea. I think, I definitely didn't really have loads of confidence in my writing, never really have. And I think I liked the idea that she wanted to make it as good as it possibly could be before we sent it to publishers. So we did 3 months of editing, like 2 full rounds of editing before it was sent out.
And then what happened?
So then it was sent to publishing houses in the US and in the UK. And I very vividly remember my agent saying to me, I was going on a business trip for work and I was going to India. And she said, like, you know what, just go and have don't think about this, like just think about work, and we probably won't hear anything in the next week. So I remember being in a taxi in rural India and I had no phone signal. Oh, I actually had something worse than no phone signal. I had just enough phone signal to see that my agent was calling me when I was in this taxi, but without any ability to answer the phone or to hear what she was saying. So there was a kind of agonizing 3-hour car journey when I knew that she was trying to get through to me, but I just could not hear a word. And that was her ringing with the news that in the UK and in the US, it looked like there would be auctions for Girl A, which was just way beyond anything that I'd ever expected or hoped for. Yeah, but it was a very stressful, tense 3 hours.
Wow. That is so exciting. That's like the total dream, having a novel go to auction. That's like, it doesn't get much better than that, right? In terms of trying to sell a book.
Yeah, it was just kind of as surreal as you would expect. And I'm still not entirely sure it's sunk in either. I think I still got a bit of doubt as to whether any of this actually happened. So.
And yet now it's come out. I wonder, it's not that the life has somewhat returned a little bit versus where it was a year ago, but we are still in the pandemic as this book is coming out. Did you see when you were selling it and planning for the release, like what did you think? Did you think it would be over by now? Like what were you anticipating the world to look like? Because I remember last March and I would talk to authors and they were even like, oh, well, I'm publishing in July, so I'll be fine. And now of course it's like the following February. So tell me about that.
I definitely had that sense, I think, of, it's kind of, we're talking about nearly a year away. Like, things will probably be back to normal by then. It's really strange because, I think ultimately in publishing and writing, it hasn't, it's not had a massive effect. I think, books are still selling. People are reading kind of more than ever. The only thing I think that is a real dampener is not getting to meet booksellers and readers. I think that is kind of like, it would have just been lovely to do that. At the same time, I hope that those moments will come. And I feel like I have this like massive list of people who I want to like say thank you to in person. And I hope that, soon enough, it will be possible to do that. But in the meantime, I think, I just feel very, very grateful to be published. And it happened in a pandemic, but yeah, I think the book's still getting out there and people are still meeting the Gracie family, and it's still gripping readers. And that's kind of what matters to me.
No, it's great. People are longing for stories that completely suck them in right now. I think more than ever, right? I feel like even my mother the other day was like, I just can't get through a book. I don't know why. Usually I get through everything and I just keep putting them down. So of course I was like, well, let me recommend a few that I haven't been able to put down, and she's like, okay, I'll try that. But I just feel like there's this collective, like, I don't know. At first, there was so much anxiety that people weren't reading. And then I think people got back into reading. And I don't know. I think there's this fatigue at this point, right? Like, especially as older people get the vaccine and they know that maybe they will have this protective shield of sorts coming, that they're, so excited almost they can't sit down and read.
Yeah. I know, I think you're exactly right. Like, I feel like at present there is actually some hope that came with the start of a new year and with the vaccine. And yeah, I'm kind of hoping that slowly that low level, kind of horrible worry and stress that has been there is kind of converting to hope. And like, the balance is still potentially a bit shifted towards worry, but it feels like we're heading hopefully in the right direction.
We should all have like one of those old-fashioned scales on our desks with hope and worry, or maybe it's more of a sliding thing, like a different type of scale where every day you can sort of nudge it to the right or the left. And then you could let people know. Like my husband could come in and he could see like, oh, you're all the way on the worry side. Okay. And he could just turn around and walk out.
Yeah, there's certain things today you should not say to me because you can see where the worry lies.
Yeah. So save it till I'm more on the hope side, come back to me then. That's not a bad idea. Now he has to rely on just a quick glance, but he can pretty much figure it out. Back in the day before the pandemic, I used to do all these events and I would pair authors for various reasons, usually 2 authors, sometimes 3, for topics that I found had some interest and maybe not in a predictable way. And I feel like if this were regular time, I would want to pair you with Stephanie Thornton Plymell. And I don't know if you're familiar with her book. It's called American Daughter. And obviously I know you're not American, but her story is a memoir about having basically grown up in a situation like this. She was one of 5 or 6, because she had half siblings, but 6 siblings essentially, who part of her growing up, she was a prisoner in a house, and how it affected all of those siblings years later. So it's almost like the real life, not exactly, it wasn't per se this house of horrors like the way your book is, with everybody and one escapee at the beginning and all of that, but it is what happens when you've gone through so much trauma in your early childhood in a completely out there way that so few people can even relate to. What happens to you then, and how do you repair your life, and what happens to all the different siblings, right? It's like you have a control set, like it's a psychological experiment. So anyway, I feel like the 2 of you should like take this on the road or something.
No, I'm like writing this down because it sounds like an amazing story. And yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that it sounds like American Daughter might have as well is that there is like hope to it. I think sometimes you can hear the arc of a story and think, this is going to be like a desperately difficult, sad read. And I think often in those kind of really dark places, there's also a lot of strength and resilience and hope as well.
Yes, she could nudge her hope meter all the way over. I mean, people can get through basically everything. And I think your book speaks to this too, as you see like a fully functional woman, marching into a prison, picking up her mother's things and, going about her business and speaking intelligently and knowing that she went through that and seeing how she can function in everyday life. Like, it's just empowering, right? Then you think, well, gosh, if people can get through this, the fact that like, my mom missed this concert of mine or something. It's like not even, I mean, she didn't, but the little things that come in most people's lives suddenly feel just so insignificant in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I wanted Lex to be this really kind of, in a way, quite reserved narrator. I don't think she necessarily wears her heart or suffering on her sleeve in any way, but I think that she just has this kind of real internal strength, like this kind of quiet strength. both in her escape, but also in how she approaches life, in the present day, as she's kind of dealing with how the House of Horrors can be turned into something, force for good. She does have a kind of slightly wry humor about things, and I think that's what sort of, for me, that's where the hope of the novel is found, is it is in Lex's kind of narrative and in her as just this like fantastic woman, I think. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Abigail, what advice do you have to aspiring authors, aside from you can't necessarily finish a book in 3 months?
That would definitely be number one. I mean,
Okay.
So I guess, and this is going to sound so unromantic, and in terms of advice, but I think it is just to write and to get the words down. For a huge amount of my 20s, I would often say, well, my dream job would be to be a writer. That's what I'd love. I'd love to be a writer. And another kind of blunt piece of advice from my husband was, well, you can't be a writer if you don't write anything, which is, felt at the time a bit kind of close to the bone, I think. But it is very true. And I think that that's kind of the biggest, most important piece of advice, in a way, that I think I had is, there's no reason why it shouldn't be you who does get published, but you will never, ever have the shot unless you have got the words down on the page. And it doesn't matter if it's on notes on your phone, which it sometimes is for me. It's just getting the words down.
That's great. Well, thank you. I love hearing success stories like yours. I love that it all paid off and that you took stock of your life and your job and rebalanced everything. And look what came of it. You gave yourself just the littlest window, and it has exploded into a novel that is so brilliantly written and gripping, and that all these other people now are going to take their time to enjoy. It's really amazing. So I feel like you have this corollary piece of advice, which is for people who are in a job that they know is not right for them. Sometimes it's worth it, because the benefits of taking stock and sort of doing what you feel deep down you're meant to do ends up helping way more people, and ultimately making you far more successful than you could have been in a job that is sort of deadening your soul.
Yeah, I'm very relieved that I took the chance. Yeah, and I very nearly didn't. So thank you so much, Zibby.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you took the chance too, because otherwise I would be holding nothing. I would just be going like this, and we would probably not be on the phone. Anyway, all right. Well, congratulations. Enjoy all of the success. So well deserved, and bravo to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for reading Girl A.
Of course. All right. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks to today's sponsor, Chicken Soup for the Soul, Making Me Time, 101 Stories About Self-Care and Balance, edited by Amy Newmark. And just a reminder again, please pre-order a copy of my book, Moms Don't Have Time To, a quarantine anthology, and go to my website under the anthology tab for the fundraiser. And I hope you'll buy a ticket and join me and I should have mentioned, all proceeds go to COVID-19 research. So please join me for the fundraiser. Thanks so much. Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.